from his studios in New York, it's time for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Here's your host, Dan Tortora.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. We are inside of the Charney's Men's Clothing Studios. Charney's Men's Clothing, the proud studio partner of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. They are here for you every single day of the week. They're on Erie Boulevard, 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, New York. They have been serving generations of men in our community, and it's dress up and dress down. Whether you're going in there to get your, favorite apparel when it comes to, Looney Tunes characters, are kind of that dress down, relax, have a good time. You're looking for a jean jacket, you're looking for something with the NBA and whatnot, they got you covered. And then if you're looking for a tux for prom or ball season, you're looking for a suit, a sport coat, you want to look nice to an event you're going out to, maybe you're asking somebody to marry you this year, so you got to have the garb for that, or maybe you're planning your own wedding and it's already set in motion, and you have to find a place to bring you and your groomsmen. The perfect place for whatever you need is Charney's Men's Clothing, 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, New York. We're in the second hour of Wake Up Call to start off this week, so happy Monday, May 6th, and we are here with Dave Pasiak, basketball coach and analyst. He was here with us in the Central New York community as a coach for a long time, and that's how we met. And now he is out in the great state where I hear they make really awesome maple syrup, doing his thing, and obviously analyzing the NBA, college basketball, high school, no matter what it is. He's just been a great mind in the world of sports and definitely in the basketball conversation. And he's been a good friend of mine for pretty much a decade now. So it's always a pleasure to have him back on the show. And with that, I bring him in. Dave, how are we doing today?
I'm great, Dan. How you doing? It's been a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a little while here. We're in the playoffs of the NBA, so I kind of just want to broad scope it for a second here. I know we went past the first round, but I want to fade back there for a second. What were your major takeaways from the opening of the NBA playoffs this year?
Well, I think the overriding thing, obviously the Warriors are still the favorites, but I don't think they have that same air of invincibility, and don't think that they're the overwhelming favorite that they have been in past years. I think, in the past, I think people would have taken the Warriors over the field, on an even bet. This year, I think, it's a lot more interesting question. I think other people have kind of caught up to them to some degree, and they've come back to the pack to some degree. I think the Clippers grabbing a couple games in Golden State in the first round was certainly something that not a lot of people expected. So I think that's the one theme, and the other theme is that for the first time in I don't know how many years, the East is wide open. It's not a bunch of teams hoping that they can get past LeBron James. With LeBron with the Lakers, and we could spend the whole show on that soap opera. But I think there are several good teams that emerge not only as a threat to win the East, but as a threat to win the NBA title. I think between Boston, Toronto, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and even Indiana hung in there until Oladipo got hurt. And I think there are 5 really good teams in the East this season. And I think Indiana, after they lost Oladipo, tapered off. But I think any of the other 4 certainly will have a reasonable opportunity in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, when we look at this, and I want to go there for a second, like you said, the Lakers and the soap opera. I was talking about it in hour one. I have tremendous respect for what LeBron can be on the court. He's obviously a specimen. He's a great basketball player. But as far as what he does to the dynamic of a team, he carries a lot of drama. He goes where coaches are young and he can kind of take over. Did it with Spoelstra, did it with Lou, did it with Walton. Walton's not there anymore. Lou's not there anymore. I mean, he kind of leaves a wake with him. And if you play with LeBron, you're playing for LeBron. You're not playing for the Lakers. You're not playing for the Heat. You're not playing for the Cavs. You're playing for him. He's judge, jury, and executioner. Magic Johnson jumped ship, and there's not a full story as to why. But I almost wonder, and I brought it up this morning on the show in the first hour, did Magic just kind of realize, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this. I brought him in, but I'm the president of basketball operations. There's supposed to be a head coach. Did he kind of see the writing on the wall and say, I'm already dealing with the Ball family. I already got to deal with LeVar in my ear. Now I got LeBron in my ear. I just can't take the frenzy. I can't take the drama. The Lakers, when I played, weren't a soap opera. We were a winning team. I mean, how do you look at everything? Because I respect LeBron's game, but it seems like where he goes, drama follows, and now Magic Johnson has left his post, and he was only there for about 5 seconds.
Well, I think Magic deserves most of the blame for the state the Lakers are in, if you want my honest opinion. I think Magic, he's one of the greatest, one of the greatest Lakers of all time, and certainly infectious personality and a guy who's a great front person to have out there as the face of your organization. But if you read and you believe everything you heard, I don't think Magic was prepared or qualified or ready to be the guy running an NBA franchise. He's still got multiple other interests, and I think there was a little thought there in LA that put Magic in charge of basketball, and because he's Magic, that's going to turn the franchise around. And you contrast him to a guy like Buford in San Antonio that really is never out there doing interviews and just is grinding behind the scenes. And the David Griffins of the world, the guys that have done a great job running a franchise. There's a lot more to it, especially in today's age, with basketball being the international game it is, and the salary cap implications, and it's a lot of work and talent evaluation and cap management and whatnot. And I just don't think Magic was prepared to take that on, and whether he realized that or whether the Laker brass kind of suggested to him that he step aside. I mean, I guess we'll never know the whole story on that, but they just need a basketball person in there, running the operation. I think Magic. I mean, people forget the Lakers were, I think, third or fourth in the West when LeBron got hurt back in December. When he went on the shelf with injury, and then they had a whole drama with Anthony Davis, and that's part Anthony Davis's people and LeBron's people, but a lot of that goes with the Lakers. That was out there in the media constantly during that period of time leading up to the trade deadline and whatnot. You contrast that to, like, the Sixers made the move for Tobias Harris. You heard nothing about that move until it happened.
Yeah.
Whereas the Laker Anthony Davis soap opera that dominated the media. So, I think Luke Walton took the fall for what happened to the Lakers this year, and I don't really think that was fair. In my opinion, Magic should take the lion's share of the blame for for this season and what happened to the state of the franchise. So, we'll see. It seems like the Lakers. When you got LeBron, it's kind of a win now thing, although he signed on for multiple years with them, which is significantly different than his time in Miami and his second go-around in Cleveland, where he would sign 2 years with a 1-year option every year to kind of keep the pressure on the franchise about you need to make moves to win now. He's in it. I think he's kind of put himself in a position where he's gonna wrap up his career with the Lakers. So I don't think. I think his mindset is a little bit different too. As far as he wants to be in LA, he's got other interests in entertainment and other ventures. That it's helpful to him to be in LA and on the West Coast. Wants to raise his family there and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see what transpires. But Tyrone Lue, if you believe what you heard, he and LeBron are going to get reunited, and Lue's going to be the next coach of the Lakers. So that will be an interesting dynamic in and of itself. Because I think the key, I saw this on social media a couple of days ago. Forget who made the quote, but it said, like, coaching in the NBA, you coach your role players and you manage your star players. And I think that's really, there's a lot of truth to that. I think whether it's LeBron James or, whether it's Durant and Curry, or whether it's, you take a look at what Toronto did managing Leonard this year. So, I think there really is a lot of truth to that. So, Lue has experience with LeBron, and, it was contentious at times, but, the end result was really good in Cleveland. And, so I think there's hope with the Lakers that, and Laker fans and Laker management that they can kind of repeat that exercise in L.A.
Speaking here with Dave Pasiak, basketball coach and analyst, spent pretty much the better part of a decade here with us on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Dave, what do you think about? I mean, like you said, you put the onus on Magic, not so much on Luke Walton, who, I mean, it's easy to put it on him. Young coach, wasn't really successful in the NBA, so they could kind of just put it on him, and people go, oh yeah, it makes sense. But, what do you think about LeBron's place in all this? Because I know you have a lot of respect for LeBron. I know you think he's a tremendous player, and at the same time, though, it does look like I was saying before, when he leaves a player, when he leaves a team, it does kind of change things for some of these guys out there, and it seems like, it is about him. When he's in interviews, it seems like it is about him. He's bought into his own hype, so to speak, and he's made comments about guys need to pay attention, guys need to not be off doing other things, but he's doing a show on HBO, and he's filming a movie, and he's doing this, he's doing that. So, I mean, it does seem like maybe the character of LeBron comes into question a little bit. He is the player that he is, but I wonder about the leadership side of it. What do you think about it?
Well, I think he's a guy that, when a franchise commits to him, I think that they're committing to a win now. We're going to do whatever we need to do to give ourselves an opportunity to compete for a championship now. And I think that's what I think he's up, he's pretty upfront about that. And like I said, this time around in LA, a little bit different with this contract situation. But, I think that a lot of I don't know how you want to put it, a lot of the after effect of having LeBron on your franchise stems largely from, the mortgage the future to win now mentality that you develop with him in your organization. And I think, I don't think it's fair to say Luke Walton hasn't really been successful. When he took over the Warriors, obviously he had the best roster in the league, but they were phenomenal for that half a season. And last year, coaching the Lakers, that team made good progress with young players. And, coming up on the end of the season, he had done a good job bringing that team along. And that team was making progress this year up until LeBron got hurt. And, then you had the whole Anthony Davis deal, and, they're talking about basically everybody's expendable and wanting to, so with young players, yes, they got to be, mentally tough. And, I think LeBron can be tough on young players. Jordan, there was nobody tougher on players than Jordan. Jordan was brutal to Tony Kukoc, and other guys that played with the Bulls. People kind of forget that. So, playing with Jordan was no walk in the park either. But I think that's why a lot of times the star players haven't made the great coaches. Because I think that they're at such a high level themselves, and they have a hard time dealing with the average player who is not at their level. And I think that's certainly the case with LeBron. And it's on the one hand, things were going really well until he got hurt. On the other hand, is LeBron with a bunch of young guys on the rise a great mix? Probably not. So, I think on the one hand, that's what you're signing on for when you commit to LeBron and building your franchise with LeBron.
So, you have this. Does he look at this situation with Magic? Does he look at this situation with maybe they're not going to get Kawhi, not going to get Kevin Durant, maybe he can't buy another team in L.A., so does he go to them and say, I want to restructure this, I want out? We've learned in football that contracts don't mean anything. Odell Beckham Jr. signs an extension. Less than a year later, he's on the Cleveland Browns. Antonio Brown is 3 years left on his contract telling Pittsburgh, I don't want to play for you anymore. And now he's in Oakland. So, does LeBron go and say, listen, I know I said this, this, and this, but this isn't what I signed up for. How do you look at that?
I don't think it's likely. I think if he had concerns about that, I don't think he would have committed 4 years to the Lakers. I think he would have signed with them on the short deals, similar to what he had been doing in Cleveland and doing in Miami. So, I'd be very surprised if that happens. I know you see the things online every once in a while about, with the Lakers entertain dealing LeBron. If they were to do that, it would signal, I don't think the Laker fan base would go for that, because if they were to, deal LeBron for a bunch of assets, basically do a Philly-style reboot, I don't think that would play well in L.A. So I would be shocked if either LeBron went in demanding a move like that, or if the Lakers initiated it. So, just if it was another franchise, maybe, but the Lakers and kind of the aura around the Lakers and the Laker fan base, I would really be shocked if that happened.
That coming from Dave Pasiak, basketball coach and analyst, here with us this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. To go back to it, surprises of the first. Obviously, like you said, the Clippers got 2 from Golden State. They won it 4-2. Houston wins over Utah 4-1. Portland over Oklahoma City, which, ever since Kevin Durant left, Russell Westbrook, it's one of those situations where he looks good and he could do good things and he could be successful, but the team just isn't going anywhere. 4-1, they lose to Portland. Denver goes 7 games with San Antonio. They win it 4-3, even though Denver was a number 2 seed in this. We know San Antonio is just a good team every single year. Tough matchup, tough out for anybody. Philly takes care of Brooklyn 4-1, Toronto 4-1 over Orlando, and Boston, Milwaukee sweep 4-0. Boston over Indiana, Milwaukee over Detroit. What are your thoughts on this? I know you brought up some injuries happen and whatnot, but were there any surprises? Were there any series that you maybe thought would be better? Did San Antonio surprise you that they pushed to a Game 7? Just kind of what your overall thoughts were from that.
Well, other than Clippers, which we talked about already, the one series I really thought would be a very competitive, very good series going in that turned out not to be was Houston and Utah. I thought that would, would be a competitive matchup. Utah defensively is very good. I really thought that would end up being like a 6 or 7 game series. I wasn't surprised that Houston won. I was surprised that it wasn't more competitive than it was. I thought Boston and Indiana, once Indiana lost Oladipo, I don't think they were on a par with the upper echelon teams in the East. Not really surprised that San Antonio extended Denver. Denver's an interesting team. They're a lot of fun to watch. The way they play, I think, this series, this round with Portland, I think is phenomenal. But, I think Jokic, and then you can say the same for Lillard with Portland. I think if those guys played in a market where they got more exposure, more TV time, more media attention, I think they would be looked at in the top 5 or 10 players in the league, both of them. But San Antonio, they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. The thing about the Spurs that was really interesting is, with Aldridge and DeRozan and whatnot, they don't play like tradition, like what we've come to know as Spurs basketball. They've become far more isolation oriented and less ball movement and ball sharing than we kind of came to know the Spurs for having. So that was interesting. Popovich kind of changed his approach and his philosophy with this team. But in terms of you figured Milwaukee was going to make quick work of Detroit, and they did. A lot of people thought Brooklyn would push Philly a little bit more than they did. I mean, Brooklyn's another team that maybe is on the rise a little bit. Brooklyn and Orlando, I think, are two teams in the East headed in the right direction, but just not ready to compete with that top four teams in the East. I think there was a clear line between the top four, and then you had Indiana, and then you had the bottom three. The West, Oklahoma City, Westbrook's. He's an interesting character too, because I think there's things about him that are really admirable, but I think there's things about him that just can drive you crazy as a fan and whatnot. Paul George seems like he's become as good a sidekick to Westbrook as anybody, because Paul George, for a good part of the year, people were talking about him in the MVP discussion. I think he's a guy that is their top option, but is okay with Westbrook thinking that he's the top option, if that makes any sense. Westbrook, George has seemed to figure it out next to him, but other than maybe Steven Adams, he's a guy where playing next to him, careers have gone to die too. Like Carmelo Anthony, Oladipo and Sabonis. Those guys, needed to get away from Westbrook to really flourish and become the players that they become in Indiana. So, I think when you got a guy like Westbrook as your top dog, there's a certain ceiling to your team, and I think that's what Oklahoma's kind of run into right now. If the team's built around him, I think they're going to be a team that's. They're not going to ever be terrible. They're kind of caught in that no man's land a little bit, where they're good enough to be in the playoffs or in the playoff picture every year, but probably not going to be good enough to to really threaten for a championship. I think their chance at a championship left when Kevin Durant left town. They're in an interesting spot at their franchise.
And that's kind of where it is now. Is it time for Oklahoma City to, see what they can do with Russell Westbrook? Is it time for them to, start to rebuild? They make it to the playoffs, but they don't look the same anymore. They seem easily beatable. They seem like, if you can isolate Russell Westbrook and you can kind of, dictate a little bit of that you're going to win this game. And, they had James Harden, they had Kevin Durant, they had the three of them together. It didn't work. I think Harden was still finding his groove at that point in his first couple seasons in the NBA. But, Durant saw the writing on the wall. So is it time for Oklahoma City to start the era sans Westbrook? Do they start to almost do it even if he is there to maybe shift a little bit here? Because it looks like Oklahoma City, if they're going to live and die by Russell Westbrook, he's going to keep getting some nice stats, but, this team may make the playoffs. They may be the 7 seed. They may be a 6 seed or a 5, something like that, but not making it farther than that, not doing anything, not winning a championship. Do you kind of just, come to terms with the fact that, Westbrook is a good scorer, but it's time to move on?
Well, it's tough to do that in a market like Oklahoma City, because it's not, in all likelihood, Oklahoma City is never going to be like a destination spot for free agents. So they got to get lucky through the draft or make astute trades, and they don't have a lot of margin for error to make mistakes. And if you say, we're gonna unload Westbrook for some assets, what kind of assets and what can you turn those assets into? Philly went that route, but Philly's a major market city, and it took them a long time after they got rid of Iguodala, basically gutted the roster. Took a lot of moves and a lot of stockpiling of assets to finally turn the corner with guys like Embiid and Simmons and Saric, and then they were able to parlay Saric and Covington into Jimmy Butler. So, I mean, that was a painful process for a long time, and I think it was difficult in Philly. I think it would be even more difficult in a market like OKC. So, I think they're almost in a position where if they want to remain relevant, they've got to continue to be built around Westbrook and just, hopefully find the right pieces to put next to him, maybe get lucky with a couple draft picks going forward, get undervalued guys that blossom, like a Steven Adams, and try to go it that way. They remind me a little bit of like Memphis was in that situation where built around Gasol and Conley, where they could get to a certain level, but you're never going to be a big free agent destination, and if you blow it up, it might be really hard to get back to relevance. And I think that's OKC is kind of in that situation. Milwaukee was in that situation a little bit, and Milwaukee, like, I really give their organization a lot of credit because they were able to retool and build around Giannis, and obviously, I mean, when he was drafted, people thought he'd be good, but I don't know that anybody thought he's going to be, top 3 or 4 player in the league good, which, I mean, he's certainly turning out to be. So, when you're in those markets, same with Portland and Damian Lillard, I mean, you're in those markets and you've got an elite level talent or a couple of elite level talents like they do with Paul George and next to Westbrook. It's a really tricky thing to try to make that move to get yourself to upper echelon level versus blowing it up and being very, very difficult to recover from.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to do, but, you almost look at how do you kind of bridge the gap and, or do you have Russell for the next couple of years, like you said, bring in some pieces that can work with him, some young guys, but then maybe try to find that phenom that is there and kind of as you're building these young pieces and giving Russell, the next couple seasons that you pass the torch essentially. So maybe you put somebody in there instead of having to blow it all up or instead of having a losing season and hoping that you get a high draft pick, but essentially bring somebody in that can bridge the gap so that fans that are buying Westbrook jerseys and showing up into the stands because of Russell Westbrook, good, bad, or indifferent, because they know he's going to score and they know that there's going to be some relevancy, that, maybe you could get another guy that's polarizing that you can get some jersey sales and some connection there as you move forward. So, it'll be interesting to see how they bridge that gap in Oklahoma City, but I want to go up to Toronto. They're still playing. They just tied their series with Philadelphia 2-2. What do you think about the Kawhi Leonard factor? Because it doesn't look like he's going to L.A., and well, at least not the Lakers. And, Toronto's done so many different things. And, I mean, you look at their social media and just, their message and how they're going about everything. They're doing everything they can to win a championship this year while doing everything they can to keep Kawhi Leonard for the long term. They're kind of fighting two battles at once. What do you think about what they're doing with Kawhi? Are they creating a good enough message? How do you see it?
Well, I mean, Kawhi is an interesting cat because you don't get very much out of him. He was phenomenal yesterday against my Sixers. And they interview him in the post game, and I mean, you would have thought, he just lost his favorite pet, just got run over by a car or something. So you don't get a lot of emotion. You don't get a lot of what he's thinking, what he's feeling out there. He's not a guy who puts a lot out. If you believe some of the stuff you hear, the Clippers seem like maybe a destination for him, and reading the tea leaves, like, the Clippers getting rid of Tobias Harris the way they did, and, maybe they're opening up a slot for him. Could be an interesting move for Kawhi. Toronto seems like a great environment. I know you're dealing with, being in Canada and, exchange rates and that kind of thing. But, just from a support in a basketball environment, I think Toronto's done everything that they can expect. They've managed his workload really carefully during the year. Probably, when you bring in a guy in his situation, and the the tendency is, I mean, we're going to get as much as we can out of them now because we may not have them next year. And Toronto has almost taken the opposite approach where they've been ultra cautious and ultra conservative with his workload. So, I think he should appreciate and value that. I think a lot of whether he re-ups in Toronto or not is, quite frankly, is probably out of the Raptors' hands. It seems like the Raptors have done pretty much everything within their control to create a great environment for him. I'm not sure. Like there's a lot of people in the media that are tying whether Kawhi stays in Toronto with how deep of a playoff run they make, and I'm just not 100% convinced that that's as relevant to the discussion as a lot of people seem to think.
Yeah, and that's to look at this, Kawhi Leonard's situation, and if it fits and if it makes sense, it looks like it does. I mean, DeMar DeRozan, I was always the proponent of keep DeMar and bring in a guy like Kawhi Leonard. When they flipped and when they obviously gave that up and brought in Danny Green, mind you, that a lot of people overlook, and he's been a big help to the Toronto Raptors, to see what they've been able to do this season without DeMar and with the addition of Danny Green and Kawhi and obviously bringing in Marc Gasol and even Jeremy Lin off the bench. There's been some good things that have come from this, arguably a better team, and, fighting the way that they're fighting, and like you said, a wide-open East with Philadelphia and Milwaukee and Boston and Toronto out there vying for the opportunity to go to the NBA Finals. So we are where we are, but there's another guy we have to talk about. He's, in my opinion, paid a lot of money to be an average player. Paid a lot of money to be subpar. Paid a lot of money to, kind of have money that's similar to Steph Curry money per season, but not play like Steph Curry. A guy that has been shut out of a game, a guy that scores 12 points, not a guy that's taken over games, and not somebody Toronto can lean on, and somebody who I think takes up a big chunk of the money in Toronto if they want to keep Kawhi and if they want to, obviously put some more pieces on the team. This is something to look at, but who's going to take this guy with the type of contract he has? And that's Kyle Lowry. I'm not against anybody. Listen, go make your money, make your money. They want to give you the money, give them the money. They thought about letting this guy go, allegedly, a couple of years ago to New York, to the Knicks. They end up keeping him. They sign him. They pay him millions upon millions of dollars. But I look at the output of Kyle Lowry, and it makes me question the amount of money that they've given and the fact that they've kind of put themselves in a situation where they're locked in with Kawhi Leonard. And to look at the breakdown really quick here, Kyle Lowry, if I say Kawhi Leonard, Kyle Lowry, 2018-19, this season, $31 million in base salary, $200,000 in incentives, $31,200,000 cap hit. Dead cap over $64 million for the team as a whole. Next season, he makes almost $33.3 million, plus the $200,000 bonus potentially. So he's costing the Raptors at least $31 million this year, $33 million in change next season. And the man gets 2 points, 12 points, 30 points, 5 points. What are your thoughts on Kyle Lowry? I mean, I'm proud of him for making the bank, but at the same time, I'm scratching my head in Toronto going, you're paying $31 million to a guy who gets lost in the playoffs.
Yeah, playoff Lowry. And one thing Lowry did, which I kind of give him credit for, is when DeRozan was there, for a lot of years, it was 1A and 1B. It was Lowry and DeRozan. And Lowry took a significant backseat role to DeRozan his last year or two in Toronto and let DeRozan be the best player. And he's done the same thing even more so with Leonard. But, then it comes to the question that you bring up, which, he's getting paid like an elite level guy, and what you're getting is just a pretty good NBA player, especially come playoff time. Now, I do think yesterday he started really well yesterday against the Sixers, and I think that was a really kind of an overlooked but really key point to that game, because I think Philly had a chance to come out, step on Toronto's throat right out of the gate, and then Raptors of old, that mindset starts to creep in. It's the same old different guys, same old Raptors. Can't get it done in the postseason. So I think Lowry starting well yesterday really helped that, and then Kawhi Leonard has really kind of saved him from that fate. Put the team on his back, and so I think had Philly won that game yesterday, I think you would have heard a lot of the same rumblings about the Raptors and whatnot, and Philly may have closed them out in 5 in Toronto. Now I think a 3-game series with 2 in Toronto. I think the Raptors, unfortunately being a Sixers fan, but I think the Raptors have a better than even chance of winning that series at this point. And I think in terms of Lowry though, the Raptors are kind of stuck there because I think he has a contract that is probably, I think it's highly unlikely that they could trade him and get any kind of return for him because of the way his contract is structured. I find it hard to believe there would be many, if any, takers in the league for him. So, yeah. I think they've kind of made their bed with that. So, I think what you get out of Lowry is what you're going to get, and I think Toronto's going to have to make the best of it over the rest of that contract.
Well, yeah, that's the part that's tough is that you look over the next 2 years and it's $64 million and change that they're paying to Kyle Lowry, which if we're talking about Steph Curry, we're talking about something. If we're talking about there's some guys out there that you can have this conversation about, but now with the inconsistency that you have, Orlando, you said about being back on the map, I agree with you. I think this is a team that's coming up. They really have been in the basement since Dwight Howard left when I was down there covering the team about a decade ago. And, a little bit less than a decade ago, I was down there in 2009 to, 2011 or so, covering this team and in the locker room, interviewing Dwight Howard, and then seeing how this team kind of went forward in the last few years without him. He crippled the franchise. I knew it was going to happen. But they found their way back up. They've done some things. They brought in some pieces. When something didn't work, they let go of it. They brought in some guys cheap. And they just brought in Michael Carter-Williams, former Syracuse player, who was on a 10-day contract, then a 10-day contract, then signed the rest of the season, and actually did himself pretty well here for the team in general and in the playoffs. I know that they lost 4-1 to Toronto, but what do you think about the Orlando Magic, and what do you think about even the future of Michael Carter-Williams, knowing that he's done some good things on this team, and, maybe he could find himself to finally have a landing spot after being with your 76ers and then being kind of a journeyman since then?
Yeah, I think Carter-Williams is kind of, he seems to have found a niche in Orlando, hopefully for his sake. That ends up being kind of a place where he can put down some stakes. But I think he's a guy that, like you said, he's almost become destined. And people forget he was a Rookie of the Year at one point. But he's kind of almost become destined to be a guy that kicks around the league and is a part and is a guy that people can sign to fill a need in the short run, but they're always going to be looking for better, looking for a guy to play over him. So maybe Orlando is a spot that he can flourish going forward. I think for the Magic in general, a lot of times, like people say, are you better off sliding into the playoffs in a 7 or 8 spot or not making the playoffs and giving yourself a chance in the draft lottery and all that kind of thing. I think for Orlando, it was really, really important and I think really beneficial to that franchise that they closed the way they did and were able to grab a playoff spot. I think that was a tangible step forward for that franchise and, sign of progress for their fan base and for the league. And, I think for the whole kind of aura and psyche surrounding that franchise, I think, them making the playoffs, grabbing a game, seems to be a good positive vibe around that team and that organization, and hopefully that'll translate into continuing to grow into a contender over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what they do and how they come about from here, because they've had a little taste of success. Can they continue to sustain that, and can they continue to move forward? Getting rid of some stuff, like I said, bringing in a vet, it doesn't work. They let him go. Having some high draft picks that they let go that maybe weren't panning out. It seems like, and they've had changes to the front office. So it seems like Orlando's looking to try and find the formula, but at least getting to the playoffs now says something about where they're heading. So we are where we are. We're with basketball coach and analyst Dave Pasiak here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Charney's Men's Clothing Studios. We have Golden State at the time that we're talking. Golden State 2-1 on Houston. Portland, Denver tied 2-2. Philadelphia, Toronto 2-2. Milwaukee and Boston 2-1 in favor of Milwaukee. All of these series look like they're going to be something potentially. Houston was finally able to get one, even if it took them a little bit of extra time. Denver, like you said, fun to watch, but this could go either way. Milwaukee and Boston. Boston was able to steal one, and then Milwaukee has gotten a couple here. And Toronto, kind of nerfed it in the beginning here, losing one at home, and then was able to kind of come back here to tie it 2-2. So what do you think ultimately about these series that we have that'll bring us to the Eastern and Western Conference Finals?
Well, I think the two games today, if you look back historically through the NBA, if Milwaukee wins, if Golden State wins, you can pretty much say those series are over. I think it's like 11 times in the history of the league a team has come back from 3-1, which I think is something like 96% of the time the team wins when they're up 3-1. So obviously, critical games for Houston and for Boston today to stay alive. If the Warriors, I think, are still the team to beat, but I think Houston, if they can get it to a Game 6 and a Game 7, and then you got a puncher's chance with a guy like Harden going nuts. I think if they were able to extend the series that far, they put Golden State in a position they haven't been in a long time as far as being, back to the wall this early in the playoffs. But if the Warriors win tonight, then that series is over. Same thing with Milwaukee and Boston. I think that's interesting. After Game 1, everybody was coming out. Paul Pierce gets on TV, and everybody's saying how it's over. Boston's the better team. They've got it figured out. And I think Boston has more good players than Milwaukee. But the problem is Milwaukee's got the best player in the series. And Milwaukee, this is maybe going to be an unpopular opinion, but I think Milwaukee's also got the edges in terms of Budenholzer as a head coach. And I like Brad Stevens and everything, but I think some of that luster has worn off this year. And I think anybody but Brad Stevens or maybe Popovich coaching that team would have gotten heat during the regular season for that team's erratic, kind of up and down, lackluster play. But I think if Boston can get it to 2-2, Milwaukee's still got the home court advantage and still probably the favorite in that series. But Boston's got if you're looking for the most talented roster top to bottom, I mean, you can put Boston up with almost any team in the league. So the 2-2 series, I think Sixers had a golden opportunity to take command of that series yesterday, and Kawhi Leonard kept it from happening. Embiid was bad yesterday too. I think he's got to play better for them to win the series. Toronto, you would think, has the edge with 2 out of the last 3 in Toronto, but Philly's proven they can win there. Toronto's proven they can win in Philly. So that probably that's a pretty evenly matched series. Slight edge to the Raptors because they have the home court the rest of the way. And then the series that gets the least amount of attention has really been terrific so far is Portland and Denver. I touched on it earlier. I think Jokic and Damian Lillard are tremendous. 2 of the top 5 or 10 players in the league, and I think this playoff series hopefully is giving the casual fan more of an appreciation for them. I thought Denver's win last night to win in Portland less than 48 hours after that 4 overtime game where they extended their starters. They had guys playing 60 and 65 minutes, and to come back and win that game last night, which was really a well-played game, was really a better played game than the 4 overtime game. Portland played well last night. Like, guys on both teams were making big plays coming down the stretch. I thought Denver winning that game last night was really impressive. That series, again, Denver's had one of the best home court records in the league this year. So, you'd give them the slight edge with it being 2-2, but would not shock me at all to see Portland win that series, win 2 out of 3 either. So, I think Philly, Toronto, and Portland, Denver, I think are unfolding as great series. And if the other two can get to 2-2, maybe we'll have 4 great series.
And, that's what I was going to ask you in closing here, Dave, is just what you think about Portland, because, they're the 3 seed in the West. We've seen them have success in the past. We go back to the Brian Grant days and Damon Stoudemire and Arvydas Sabonis and company being there, and how they played against the Lakers, and they would get up but ultimately fall, but they – and obviously the Karl Malone thing where Karl Malone would elbow guys in the face. And so one night in Portland, they gave Band-Aids to all the fans who wore it on their nose like Brian Grant. I mean, there were some good moments in Portland, and they've been up and down and around the corner. But we talk about finding life after the fact. And, do you have a big market? And, can you bridge the gap and whatnot? What do you think about Portland? I mean, they've found a way to be relevant, but they've done it with different players over the last decade. And now they're going to push Denver, and I think that this could arguably be one of the best series and maybe the only one that goes to 6 or 7 games in this thing. What do you think about Portland and what they've been able to do and the fact that, they've kind of weaseled their way back into it, so to speak?
Well, I think they got a superstar to build around in Lillard. And Lillard seems to be invested in the Blazers, which I think, you don't hear things about, Lillard wants to go to L.A., Lillard wants to go to New York, Lillard wants to go to wherever. He seems like a guy who's invested in Portland and invested in the team as the face of the franchise. And he's a tremendous player. You can make an argument he's the best point guard in the NBA right now. They've got a good number 2 in McCollum. That's a team where it feels like they're one player away from being able to really compete at a championship level, but they've also become kind of a trendy pick to come out of the West. So, personally, I have a heart. It wouldn't surprise me if they beat Denver. I think Denver's got the slight advantage with the home court the rest of the way, but it would surprise me a lot if Portland were able to get through and then get past Golden State or Houston to get to the finals. I think they would be a significant underdog against either one of those teams.
That coming from Dave Pasiak, our basketball coach and analyst. Dave, as always, I appreciate it. I know every conversation that we have opens the doorway up for more, but you can plan on, and we would love to have you back here as we go through the playoffs here to make sure that it's more consistency to have Dave Pasiak here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, because I love your insight and I love your time and your research and just, really anything that we have coming up, you have an opinion on, and I appreciate the fact that, you're a student of the game every single day for as long as you've coached, and so it means a lot to the show, and I look forward to having you back soon.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Dan, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
All right, take care and have a good day.
You too, Dan. We'll see you. Bye.
Thanks.